One of my heuristics now with philosophers in general is that any philosopher who cannot recognize or acknowledge that their own semantics are contingent and that what they are doing by applying words is communicating in some sense where other people are going to infer different things from their words, therefore they're trying to say it in a way that makes sense for other people. If the philosopher doesn't understand all these things, then that's a huge flag. That's a huge red flag, and we have to be careful about what they purport to be true. Because when they talk about truth, they mean truth as in like the ontological truth of the world. And what I'm trying to do is talk about how we can understand things in certain ways. And when I say that, I mean like we can, like I know it's possible, like I understand it to be a certain way, but also can, like we're allowed to understand it in a certain way, given the other concepts we understand. This is very Hegelian. Imagine concepts stand as rules for how other concepts can be used, and the concept itself. Our understanding of a category sets up rules for how we can understand individuals of that category, right? The universal. That was the whole universals particulars discussion. All right, what do you think is the primary goal of philosophy? I think it's making sense of the world. I think that's literally it, making sense. It's just trying to, and when I say that, I don't mean like in a sense of like, let's try to box everything into specific categories. I mean, literally, we're trying to feel a certain way. We're trying to feel like we understand what's going on. Imagine the base human condition of we're trying to get to that order. We're trying to go from the chaos to the order here. And once we find order, we go out into more chaos and try to make more order from that. Heidegger pointed this out as the existential characteristic of curiosity, how we're just always on to that next thing. Once again, I wouldn't say that there is like a primary goal in some like static truth sense. I just think that what philosophers are doing, like at a fundamental level, is trying to make sense. Like I think that's that's a justifiable way we can think about it, right? It's just one way we can think about what the goal of philosophy is, trying to make sense of what we're experiencing, make sense of the world, make sense of our emotions, make sense of our lives. I think that's what philosophers are doing, which is why I see like when there's like an analytic philosopher that goes real deep into the weeds of this one semantic rule set. I'm like wondering like, okay, what benefit are we getting here? Like you're indulging yourself here and no one else is able to like this is a very selfish philosophy you've got, I could say. Truth/knowledge, understanding, wisdom, happiness, goodness, justice. I think all of those encapsulate what I mean by saying like making sense. We're trying to regulate our emotions. We're trying to regulate our emotions by coming up with patterns of thought that feel good, that don't feel bad. And those patterns of thought include topics such as goodness and justice, and obviously like happiness, with regard to ourselves and others. One thing that we point out in the epilogue is that we can ground the story of wisdom in the immediate practical challenges of survival, specifically looking at the two primary theaters of action where humanity always operated, the physical and the social. The physical world was a domain of direct high-stakes prediction error. A tool either worked or it shattered. A plant was either nourishing or sickening. Once again, like when philosophers of the last 2,000 years are operating, I should say like 4,000 years, they're operating with the evolutionary product of this story. It's all regulation, it's all homeostasis, it's all like means for our body to survive going into the future. A tool either worked or it shattered. A plant was either nourishing or sickening. Survival itself depended on creating and transmitting reliable, practical knowledge about the tangible world. I should really say the empirical world here. Simultaneously, survival depended on group cohesion. Individuals had to learn the rules that led to social harmony and avoid the pain of ostracism. Right, and the stakes were so high socially back then. We are so relatively wealthy today that you can be ostracized from some community and still be fine, unless of course like you're in a situation where you're being ostracized from your like own family, and that is your means of like straight up survival, like of nutrients and whatnot. Then you have a real problem on your hands. We could get into the discussion about antisocial behavior and homelessness, and that's just that's a bummer of a topic. People came to understand wisdom about the world and themselves through action. Early peoples discovered that what worked by trying things, and they discovered social norms by bumping up against them. So yeah, this is how we learn. By bumping up against them is like the story of neuroplasticity in some sense. Okay, so if you could just pick a single word or phrase that isn't in the list to describe what the goal of philosophy is, it'd be making sense. I mean, really, if I were to give the more fundamental word, it would be something like homeostasis or autopoiesis or allostasis. Depends what level of abstraction we're just trying to talk about. Granted, like I try to set out in the beginning of this document, how can we evaluate our framework? Because philosophical frameworks deal with abstract questions that lie beyond direct observation, they cannot be proven or disproven with the same empirical certainty as scientific theories. This presents a challenge. If there's no single objective test, how do we evaluate our framework? We must make a deliberate choice about the values we want our framework to uphold in line with the mission of this document. To create an actionable guide for a fulfilling life, we can evaluate our framework based on the following criteria. We've got coherence, like we want something that makes sense. So this is like literally in the sense that it needs to be compelling, like that's perhaps the side of it where it needs to feel like it is saying something. It's got some information. Explanatory power. It should account for a wide range of experiences and phenomena. So not only should it just feel compelling, but it should feel compelling in relation to your broader like life and other things you know. Both of those aren't sufficient. What we really want at the end of the day with those first two is practical utility. We want to be able to leverage it to go and do something. So that everything we do in this document is towards the practical application of it.